The highways of Florida are long, endless, and lonely. But between 1989 and 1990, one stretch of asphalt became the hunting ground for a woman unlike any the world had ever seen. Aileen Wuornos, the drifter, the hitchhiker, the woman who called herself a victim of men. To some, she was a monster. To others, she was a broken soul shaped by cruelty, abandonment, and rage. This is the story of America's most infamous female serial killer, and the tragedy that created her. Aileen Carol Pittman was born on February 29, 1956, in Rochester, Michigan. Her mother, Diane, was just 15 when she gave birth. Her father, Leo Dale Pittman, was a convicted child molester and diagnosed schizophrenic. He would hang himself in prison before Aileen ever met him. By the age of 4, Aileen and her brother Keith were abandoned by their mother and sent to live with their grandparents. But there was no safety waiting there. Her grandfather, Laurie Wuornos, was an alcoholic with a violent temper. Aileen later claimed that he physically and sexually abused her, starting when she was just a child. By the time she was 11, Aileen was trading sexual favors for food, cigarettes, and shelter. She slept in the woods behind her house, used old tires as pillows, and dreamed of escaping the world that had already given up on her. A former classmate noted that she was wild, always angry, always fighting someone. But behind that, you could tell, she was hurting. At 14, she became pregnant, reportedly by one of her grandfather's friends. The baby was taken away, and she was expelled from school soon after. When her grandmother died of liver failure, Aileen was thrown out of the house. At just 15, she was on her own. For years, Aileen drifted through the Midwest and the South, living off hitchhiking, petty theft, and prostitution. She would later call the open road her home. But her home was dangerous. Aileen was assaulted repeatedly, robbed by clients, and beaten by strangers. Each encounter etched something deeper into her psyche, a belief that men existed only to hurt her. In 1976, at 20 years old, she tried to start over. She married a 69-year-old yacht club president named Louis Fell. It lasted just 9 weeks. Police reports showed Aileen repeatedly assaulted him, hitting him with his own cane. She was arrested, divorced, and soon back on the streets. Over the next decade, she racked up arrests for armed robbery, check fraud, and car theft. But Florida would become her final stage. It was there, in 1986, that Aileen met a woman who would change everything. Her name was Tyria Moore, a hotel maid from Ohio. They met at a Daytona Beach gay bar, and from that night on, they were inseparable. Aileen called her, "the only person who ever loved me." They lived in cheap motels, stole from stores, and survived off the money Aileen made from sex work. But by late 1989, something inside Aileen broke. Between December 1989 and November 1990, 7 men were found shot to death along Florida highways. Their bodies were left in wooded areas, their cars abandoned miles away. All had picked up a female hitchhiker before dying. Police had no suspect, no pattern, only fear. The detective noted that, "We thought it was a male serial killer. The idea of a woman doing this, that didn't cross our minds at first." The victims were men in their 40s to 60s, businessmen, truckers, retirees. Each had been shot multiple times with a .22 caliber pistol. Aileen would later claim the killings were in self-defense, that each man had tried to assault her. But police saw a pattern of robbery and rage. Credit cards, cash, and cars were stolen. Her fingerprints were everywhere. On January 9, 1991, police finally caught up with her. Aileen was arrested at a biker bar called The Last Resort, a bitterly ironic name for the end of her road. Tyria Moore was also taken in. Detectives struck a deal, immunity for Tyria, in exchange for getting Aileen to confess. They wired her with a recorder and placed a call. Tyria's voice was recorded, saying, "They're going to charge me, Lee. Please tell them the truth." Aileen was recording agreeing, saying, "Okay, Ty. I'll confess. I did it." It was the confession that sealed her fate. In the months that followed, Aileen Wuornos was charged with 7 counts of murder. She would eventually plead guilty to 6. The media swarmed. A female serial killer, angry, unapologetic, and openly lesbian, became an instant national obsession. Reporters called her the damsel of death. Psychiatrists called her mentally unstable. Aileen called herself a woman who fought back. Aileen replied saying, "I'm not a serial killer. I killed to survive. They would have raped me. Every one of them." But her own words often contradicted themselves. At times she wept for her victims, at others, she cursed them. Her rage would spill out during interviews, screaming at journalists, accusing guards, and claiming the government was trying to kill her. Over time, her mental health unraveled. Psychologists diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder, antisocial disorder, and trauma-related delusions. But by then, the court had already decided she was sane enough to die. After 12 years on death row, Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection. Her final words were chillingly simple. Aileen was recorded saying, "I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus, June 6th. Like the movie, Big Mothership and all. I'll be back." She was 46 years old. In death, she became both a symbol and a warning of what happens when trauma, violence, and neglect collide in one human being. Aileen Wuornos remains one of the most studied serial killers in American history. Her life inspired books, documentaries, and the Oscar-winning film Monster, starring Charlize Theron. But behind the headlines and the horror was a question that still divides criminologists today. Was Aileen a born killer? Or a product of the world that failed her? Criminologists stated, she was both a victim and a villain. Her story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about abuse, gender, and violence. To the end, she insisted she wasn't evil. Just broken. A woman who wanted love, and found only pain. On the lonely roads of Florida, Aileen Wuornos left behind more than bodies. She left behind a haunting question. If monsters are made, who makes them? If this story moved you, hit the like button, it really helps the channel grow. Subscribe to Mystic Crime Stories for more chilling true crime documentaries every week. And tell us in the comments. Was Aileen Wuornos truly evil, or the result of a lifetime of pain?